Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, Gene.
And V, we interview people in the animation industry about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on Twitter if they had specific topics they want us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Arin Hanson. Hey!
Hey, what's up? Yo, thanks for having me.
How's it going? Of course.
Dude, I just want everyone to know that this was rescheduled like 4 times or something because I was the asshole. I just want everyone to know that.
No one would have known, Aaron. Why are you telling us? Why would you tell us the sausage is made?
I just got to be honest, all right? I just got to be honest.
Well, you've been very gracious.
Yes. I was just going to say you've been very gracious about all of the bullshit that I've put you through. Can I swear?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
We forgot
cool.
to talk about that, but you can say whatever you want.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, follow your heart. No, it's all good. We're happy that you made time. We know that you're busy, and you're busy with all kinds of stuff. You do an internet show called Game Grumps.
Word.
You are going on a tour soon, doing Scribble Showdown, right?
That's right, yeah.
But why am I describing what you do? Tell us who you are and what you do for the people who might not know.
Oh man. Well, you told me beforehand that you were going to talk to me about my animation career, which has a huge gap. But yeah, so I made a bunch of animations a long time ago, like 9-10 years ago. I did a lot of animations, Newgrounds and stuff. I was the #1 artist on Newgrounds for a while, which is wild to think about then and even now. And it just garnered a lot of views on YouTube. So I mostly did like parodies of stuff, video game parodies, but had my own little shorts and everything. And I had a short stint at Fox, doing shorts for them, and did some music videos for my band Starbomb. So that's what's up. Or are we just like going right now?
We're just going.
Yeah.
Going.
Okay.
Follow your heart. Yeah, you've done a lot. The Newgrounds thing would be a great place to start because how old were you when you first started doing Flash animation?
Oh geez, I was in middle school. So what age is that?
12, something like that.
A little younger, even. I feel like middle school, you're probably
Maybe.
like something like 8-ish. No. Wait.
No, that's no.
No, I'm confusing elementary and middle school. No. Gene, you're
French
right.
math.
Like, yeah. Forget what I said anything.
Yeah, that's. I think a lot of people kind of start around that time because you have the free time. I think that's why people usually start.
100% it, man. It's just like you're a kid. You got plenty of time to just do whatever you want to do in your bedroom. You know, it's like you go to school, you come home, don't do your homework, and just do some animation stuff. And yeah, I remember I downloaded Flash. I didn't know how to use it at all. I made these little shorts. I think the first short I ever made in Flash was like a Gundam Wing short. If that dates my Flash career. But it was like, so what I used to do was I used AIM like religiously. AOL Instant Messenger for those
for the children,
uncultured.
For the Zoomers.
So there was an option in AOL Instant Messenger where you could hit like F5 or something, and then it would just start recording your mic up to 10 seconds. So I just, with my friends, I would just make endlessly these like sketches and like little bits that were always like at least 10 seconds. And one of them, that's like the first thing I animated was one of those bits. And then like I continued to do that with a couple bits and every so often. And like if I had a in my opinion better idea, I would open up Cool Edit, as it was called. You might know it as Adobe Audition now.
Okay.
I would record like a longer version of it, and that's sort of how I got into like the public eye. Was I did these MP3s called In a Nutshell, and so like it was like Dragon Ball Z in a nutshell, like Digimon in a nutshell, Pokemon in a nutshell, and then I would just put them in my Napster library. And like back in the day, for those of you who don't know what Napster is, it was a music sharing program that got sued by Metallica.
Yeah.
So the way that Napster worked was you would have a music library, and people could just search and like look through each person's library. But you could search like Metallica, for example, and then it would show you like all of the people that have files that have the word Metallica in it, right? So the way that you sort of like proto-algorithmed was you would just load your MP3 up with like words. It would be like, the song, and then like best song ever, hard rock, metal. So what I would do was I would put like comedy, funny, parody in the MP3.
Oh,
And
like tags, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I just let it sit on my computer for like a couple months, and then I was curious, and I was like, has anyone downloaded these? And I searched, and like I got like 100 results, and I was like, whoa. Jesus. People just like started downloading my shit out of nowhere. And then this guy named Channel Cat made a cartoon out of the Dragon Ball Z in a nutshell when I did, and put it on Newgrounds, and it was like that day it was funny. Like, oh, thank you. Wow.
That's like one of the first things that I like found on the internet, I think. And I remember like showing my friends, and I was like, dude, look at this. This shit's so funny. I used to quote it all the time. With that Papa hands like that. that exact. Yeah, that exact way of delivering it.
Yeah, what's so interesting is that you made the audio. That was what you did, and somebody else made the animation, right? That's
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
Without
so awesome.
Like, I didn't know about this, by the way. He just like, because this was the age of, this was the fucking Wild West of the internet. So nobody knew like the rules, or like there was no sort of like etiquette for art or whatever. So it was just like somebody would find an MP3 on Napster, and then they'd be like, I'm gonna make a cartoon out of this, and then they do it, and then you just put it up, which like I didn't have a problem with. I've never really had a problem with that sort of thing ever in my sort of like art career or whatever. So like when that happened and I saw it, I sent him, because I was like a Newgrounds user, like whoa. So I sent him a message, and I was like, hey dude, that was I made that MP3. And then he was like, dude, I'm so sorry, oh my god. And I was like, no. It's all cool. That's very flattering, and I think it's dope. I was like, I'm working on another one if you want to do like a second one. And he was like, oh man, I'm so busy, I don't know if I have time to do that. And I was like, okay. And so then I sent him the second one, and he was like, I'm working on it right now.
So even then, like, how old were you then? Like 13?
Yes, I was literally 13 when I made the first Dragon Ball Z in a nutshell MP3.
That's
wild. So crazy.
So, even then you were already kind of like growing the animation discipline in your own small way.
Yeah, but especially at that age, everything's like, I want to say parody in the sense of like computer parody, where it's like a copy. Like everything you do when you're that age is like using something else as the basis, right? The reason I did those, I called them Ego and Company, because I went by Egoraptor that early on in my life, because it was a character I came up with when I was like 8 or 9, which is embarrassing. But,
I'm sure you're happy that it's followed you for 25 years.
Yeah, well, I've mostly gotten away from it now, because I quietly changed the Game Grumps intro to just say Arin instead of Egoraptor, and like nobody noticed.
What's so funny, like I know your username Egoraptor because I was on Newgrounds for a little bit, and I remember like I was just hanging out with a couple of kids on Newgrounds, and one of them one day came to me and was like, hey, listen to this. This is our opportunity to break into the business. Do you know Egoraptor? He's doing a collab. And he was like, this is how you get to be a professional. And I was like, wow. Yeah, that was so funny. I was
what was the collab?
I cannot remember. It was probably like a music video. Like there was like a moment on Newgrounds where doing collabs was like really, really popular. People would just like, you would like just pick a song and like get a bunch of artists together, and then you would like manage to put together like a music video. To be honest, I was just like, I was already 16 at the time. I was like, no, we're just making cartoons online. We're not professional.
Yeah.
But I just love that this kid was just like, listen, like drop everything. You get to be a professional if you work on this collab with Egoraptor.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's very sweet of that person to say, though.
You have a knack for like just doing stuff. which is, I think, a gift because like a lot of people that and I include myself in this to a degree, like I think a lot of people just have a hard time starting a thing, much less finishing it, much less putting it out, you know. And something that I've always admired about your work is that you have an idea and you just execute it. You like take it to the finish line, and they're usually short, very self-contained, you know, a gag or whatever. I mean, some of them are long form too. Like I really liked Sequelitis back in the day. That really got me into game design. Like I really started understanding game design, and like I would even wager that spawned a lot of the video essay format that we see now, because like everyone's doing fucking video game essays, video essays. But yeah, but you just commit to stuff, and I wonder like, is it just sort of a drive you have to make stuff, or is it hard? Like, how do you push past the moments where it doesn't feel satisfying to work on a thing anymore?
Well, I actually didn't finish my story earlier but
okay.
which is good because this actually loops into that.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, you know, when you're a kid, when you're 13, like everything sort of comes off. It's basically like a rip off of something else.
Sure.
So like the Ego and Company MP3s I did, like DBZ in a nutshell. Those I got the inspiration for those from like Opie and Anthony bits, and like because I didn't know that was from a radio show. I thought it was just some funny dudes making bits. But there was one bit that was going around that was pretty popular on Napster, which was like Star Wars in 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved the idea that you could just like condense comedy into like, it's just like joke with which like to my ADD brain as a 13-year-old, I was like, of course, that's the way to do it. I don't want to like have all this time in between jokes. I want just like everything to be a joke. So you were talking about Sequelitis. So Sequelitis came from what was making the rounds was the Red Letter Media Star Wars.
Yeah,
that was like right when that was huge.
yeah.
And you can tell, like, if you watch the first Sequelitis, which was the Castlevania one,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much like ripped directly from Red Letter Media.
Okay.
But like the thing about that is, you know, you watch those sorts of things, and what's cool for me is not necessarily I had to be like an adult to look at this from like an adult lens, but
Right.
I always saw it as like, what would I do better? But now as an adult, I'm like, that's not really what it is. It's what would I do that's more like me, you know, like how would I put myself into this and like my sort of view of the world, my perspective, my lens. So like that's how Sequelitis came in. So that's sort of like how everything that I make comes to fruition, is I see something that's like really cool and inspiring, and I'm like, I love this. How would I make this mine? And then that spawns something that, you know, may look similar or may look totally different. And that goes both ways too. A lot of the things that inspire me are things that suck. That are just like a train wreck, and I'm like, dude, you could do this so much better if you just did X, Y, and Z. And then, you know, you go ahead and do that, and then, you know, it becomes this like brand new thing that nobody's ever seen before, because it's like your inspiration was this trash fire that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah, but I mean, the work ethic is what inspires me, because I think that just looking at the amount of stuff you've done, you know, not everything is gonna hit either, but you keep making stuff, you kept trying things, and I think that's been a big part of your success from my perspective, at least. Yeah, and I wonder if there's some bit of advice that you could sort of impart on young artists who have a hard time pushing through the self-doubt and the just not even, you know, it's hard to make shit. Like, it's hard to finish a project. And so I wonder if there's anything that you do that helps you finish stuff.
I mean, my advice is always just fuck it. Like, who gives a shit? If there's something that you want to make, there's so much stuff out there like who
True.
cares? You know, it's
Yeah.
like you look at the people that inspire you, and it's like, oh, that's so overwhelming because like, wow, they're up here and I'm down here or whatever. And it's like, no, they were down there once, and also I'm sure if you talk to them, they'd be like, oh man, I fucked this up, and like I didn't do this right. You know, it's like we're all the same in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So if you just do things, you just gradually get better at it.
Yep.
And the thing that I've found, that's been sort of a realization recently is that like if you just go and you just do things, it matters to you way less. Because I was in a situation recently where there was somebody that like cared so much about a thing, and felt so like slighted and wronged by this one thing that I was also a part of. And I just didn't, I was like, whatever, I have all this other stuff, but it was like that was like the thing that they had, and it was like really important to them.
Right. Sure.
And I don't mean that as like a negative. I just mean that as like, you know, if you have more and more things that you're doing, or you know, that kind of stuff bothers you less.
It's easier to shrug it off. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because it's like, well, I've already moved on. You know, I've already moved on from this thing. That's
a good point.
And that's a thing that I think like early artists do when they like come up with, you know, like an idea for a show or a comic or whatever. It gets very like precious, you know. It's like, this is my thing and I want it to be exactly how. And there's this big thing about like, you know, oh, the industry is gonna warp it if I try to like pitch it to Cartoon Network or whatever. But it's like, yeah, I mean, that's just how it is. If you want to make it exactly how you want to make it, you should just make it on your own, which will take fucking forever. You know, the Bakshi model of like, you know, starve for a year and then make $1 billion, you know. But you know, it's like you make a thing and then it becomes a thing, and then once the thing is done, you've got so much experience and you've like, you know, you've grown so much as a person that like that thing that you make, you're gonna be like, cool, what's the next thing, you know? And maybe that's just me, but I feel like if you have an artist brain where you just always want to create, that's just natural. The way
I was gonna say, yeah, that's such a really cool view on making art and just making stuff. And do you feel like you've always been this way, or do you feel like you've kind of like do you feel like this is something that you've learned from maybe like, I don't know, like looking around at like your friends or your parents or whatever, or yeah, kind of were you just always like this kind of person, like fuck it, I'll just make stuff?
Well, that's the thing is I feel like almost like what you see maybe has always been the same, but the fuel has changed. I went from fucking like diesel to like electric, right? Like at first there was a lot of like anger and spite that sort of drove me to do a lot of things. And like, yeah, I was, and that's how I can relate to so many kids nowadays who have this outlook on like, oh, you know, I don't want my work to be stolen, or like, I don't want, it's like, cause I was that kid, you know?
Sure.
And you know, this is so hard and I hate my work, and you know, there's all these other people that don't deserve it that are getting so big. Like that was me when I was younger. But now, you know, I've made so many things and I've been in both positions now that it's like none of it really matters. You just got to do what you like doing. And in a lot of ways, if your goal is like success or whatever, I think shifting your mindset to being about like, this is the stuff that I like doing, makes you more likely to find success. Because like what's interesting about you is you, right? So if you're just like, okay, what are these 5 things about this show that's like makes it successful or whatever, it's like you could do that all day and night, but what made it successful was it was that person's thing, right? And so like if you sort of inject yourself into things, it becomes more and more inherently interesting, because everybody's interesting in their own way, and the way that they express themselves is interesting. So if you lean into that, I feel like at the very least you'll have expressed yourself and there's some satisfaction in that. And at the most, people will relate to you as a person because you're putting yourself into your art.
I think that's so great. That's so beautiful. It really is.
It's tough. I think it's tough for it is very good advice. I think it's tough for a lot of people because it's like you have to reveal more of yourself, which no one wants to do, right?
Oh, for
like,
sure. Being an artist is so vulnerable.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that that's something that probably got easier for you over time, right? Or would you say that it's always been kind of came easier to you, the sort of like being able to open up? Because I mean, you do a show where you're always talking about yourself and you're just kind of, and I've always thought that's like mortifying to me. I mean, shit, I'm on a podcast now, but I don't have to, we have guests, so I don't have to like open up as much about myself. And I used to listen to Game Grumps a whole lot, and so I was always like, how the fuck does he just like I don't know. I don't but I guess it's the fucking attitude, right? Like you probably just don't really care.
Yeah, well, there's also a skill to it, like it's one thing to just like talk about yourself, but it's another thing to sort of like have the experience of like knowing these sort of topics lead to this kind of conversation. You know what I mean? Like you just get a sense of it. I don't know if I would be able to like teach it if somebody asked me to
just gotta feel it out.
Yeah, but I will say, I don't know, because it's not. Game Grumps is interesting because it's not fully vulnerable. It's still a show. I mean, I don't want to be pretentious about it. Like it is art in a certain way, and I know a lot of people. Yeah, I know a lot of people will probably scoff at that concept, but it's to me, it's sort of like it's performance with a little bit of vulnerability. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, what I'm doing is an exaggeration. I'm playing. I'm playing in the space that's been created by Game Grumps. It's not like myself maybe leaks in a little bit, but for the most part, it's a performance. So I don't see it as a super vulnerable place. I think there was a time where I did, and I think those moments can be gratifying, but can also be sort of they can be troublesome, because I think a lot of people get the impression that they know you. Or things that you believe or think maybe aren't articulated as well as you think they are, or that they should be before they're presented to an audience. And as time has gone on, with the prevalence of social media and algorithms sort of like pushing things far over here or far over there, there's a lot of like bad faith reads of things that you would say about your beliefs or about your life, that sort of make it like difficult to open up about that kind of stuff, because so much of life is gray and is like a dialogue, and you have like 20 people in your life that you talk about really heavy shit with. But if you're presenting to like 200,000 people, that's a completely different state of mind, because now you have to consider like, okay, what is the general consensus on this topic? What will people be outraged by about this topic? And then you sort of have to
changes every week.
Yeah, and you have to steer clear of that stuff, or lean in really hard, which like isn't reality in my opinion. So it's so just to answer your question, it's like 20% vulnerable being on Game Grumps.
That's really interesting though, because we do get that question a lot when we interview showrunners from like Twitter. They often ask us kind of like, how do you see your interaction with the public, kind of like, and how do you kind of like manage just like parasocial type of relationship? It sounds like you have a pretty good philosophy around it, or maybe you don't. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, the right philosophy is don't, right? Like it's just it's don't engage, don't, because it's not real. None of it is real. It's like, and the problem is so many people have like access to you, especially on a platform like Twitter, where somebody who's like a really hateful person, their tweet looks exactly the same as, you know, somebody who
you
has
have no
60
clue,
million followers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult to like parse where things are coming from, because in your, like I said, like in your like close group of like 20 people, you know, like, oh, this guy has this experience and he works there and he went through this, and you know, he told me this about how his mom treated him or whatever. So like I get where he's coming from on this specific issue, and that's nuanced and that's interesting, and I respect that. But when you're on fucking Twitter and somebody says some shit, you're just like, I don't, you know, like this could be so hateful. This could be sarcastic. I don't know if they're like playing along or if they think this is a joke, or so that I try not to engage with that as much as possible unless it's like super obvious or I know the person.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I have like 11,000 followers or something at this point, and like I crossed that line into wacko land where suddenly like people who don't follow me just try to start shit, you know. And it's just like I'll post an opinion, not even like a negative opinion. I'm like, Dune was good, and then some asshat is like, boring, and I'm like, you don't even follow me. Like, what are you fucking like? What are you doing in my house? And I feel like with the amount of followers you have, it's got to be just fucking constant, like just constant people just trying to like knock you down for no reason.
Yeah, for sure. And like, you know, the sort of more that you get like a following or whatever, the more of a target you are. I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people are sort of waiting around with their sniper rifles for, you know,
it feels like that sometimes.
An error, you know. I think I've trended on Twitter 4 times now in the #1 slot. And,
really?
And never, like, you don't trend on Twitter for good things.
No.
No.
Oh my god.
So it's just like, on one hand, it's awful.
Yeah.
On another hand, like, I get it, and also it sort of like reveals to me certain weaknesses that I have, maybe. Because I try not to let it get to me, but I also try to be just have a humanity about it. Because if so many people are saying one thing, then there's got to be some truth to it. So maybe I should reevaluate, you know, my values or the things that I think or whatever. So in a lot of ways, those moments have been helpful, but like 80% traumatic and 20% helpful.
Yeah. It fucking stings. Yeah. When people start, and especially because, I mean, I've known you for a while and I know you mean well. Like, I know you are trying, like all of us are trying to do your best, and we don't all have all the information all the time. Right. Like, so everyone should be given a chance to figure things out and learn, and the like the social landscape is changing so fucking fast and aggressively lately that it's like, you and I, and V too, like we all grew up on the internet in the mid 90s, and what a hellscape that was, you know, like,
oh, absolutely.
It was just like everyone was just trying to like out offend each other, and
but that was you know, that's like repression, right? Like, it's like, you're not allowed to say that kind of stuff, so you go the place where you feel safe to say that stuff. But the internet's a different landscape now, where it's almost the opposite. It's like, how altruistic can I be? How like, how much can I show I'm a good person? Which is like an exaggerated point of view, you know. Like, I've been in conversations with people where like they tweet one thing, and then I'm like, oh, you know, and then I see them in real life, and I'm like, oh man, like, that's really interesting that you're, you know, you tweeted about that, and they're like, you know, I don't really, you know, it's not really that big of a deal to me. I just, and it's true. Like, I've felt that way too, where it's like, you want to, you know, they call it sort of virtue signaling or whatever, but it's like, you, in a lot of ways you have to, you know, there's that meme of, I love ducks, and it's like, your silence about horse speaks volumes, you know, like, it's, people are always looking for that kind of
didn't
thing.
know you were a horse hater.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, I recently did that tweet about Pokemon Arceus, where
What was
I don't know if either of you saw it, but it was like the game looks like graphically looks like a
it looks like a
first
DS
year Unity game, you know?
Yeah. It doesn't look great.
which is like fine, whatever. But also, this is the most popular franchise of all time.
It's ridiculous.
So isn't that interesting that there's the contrast there? But everybody's read of it was like, I'm saying this game's gonna suck, it's terrible, it's like, that's not at all what I'm saying. All I'm saying is,
but even if you were, who gives a shit? Like, you're a guy that's online. Like, you're allowed to hate a game. It's wild to me.
I think
that's also true.
That's I mean, you know, that's kind of what you guys were saying earlier. It's like we're, unfortunately, because of like your status, it's people will misinterpret things that you say because there's just too many of them. But I was gonna ask you, like, how do you deal with when things aren't looking up, like kind of like, you know, when like for example, when you're trending on Twitter, like like what do you do? Like, do you just kind of like shut off all of your like your phone, like you put it on like airplane mode for like 3 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, you can't expose yourself to that kind of vitriol because it really fucks with your head, you know, to read words in front of you that are like towards you on a public forum. It's just like, wow, my life is over, you know, like you just can't expose yourself to that stuff. I usually stop going on Twitter or whatever, and then, you know, I'll ask my friends like, how's it going? Is it over yet? but like, you know, you just have to remind yourself like, oh, I have people in my life that care about me. This is, you know, this isn't real.
None of it's real.
So much of what happens in those circumstances is like untrue or like, you know, an exaggeration. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not actually that person. So even if I like lose like my career or whatever, I know that I'm not that person, so I can at least be okay with that,
right?
Because at the end of the day, my perspective on like what I do is totally unnatural, and like, you know, to speak to hundreds of thousands of people every day in a show is totally unnatural. You know, like I should be a plumber who like goes into somebody's house and is like, hi, I'm going to fix your plumbing, and then like, thank you, I will take the money now for my services, and that's it. You know, that's like a real interaction with a human being, as opposed to, you know, speaking bullshit for 30 minutes a day to hundreds of thousands of people. That's a lot of responsibility, but it's also, you know, it affords me a lot of things. So there's a duality to it, right? Like, it's like, it's fun. I like to do it. You know, it's something that I'm good at, so it feels satisfying when, like, you know, I do something and something hits. But at the same time, it's like, would I miss it if it were gone? There's a lot of me that would say I wouldn't.
I was gonna ask you, like, is this something that you think about a lot? Because like, I think this is something in like, for people who work in animation studios, like we always think a lot about like, maybe I could move out of California, but that means kind of like losing the job. So it's kind of like thinking of like this alternate universe of like, what would my life be like if I didn't have this job? So do you kind of like think about like what?
Wow, is that like a prevailing thing that you hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty common. It's pretty common because, like, you know, I think it's kind of like similar to like your career in terms of like, you have that like super boost at the beginning where you're like, wow, this is so cool. Look at me. I'm doing this crazy like cool thing. And then you're doing it for like 2 years and you're like, this is still really cool. And you're doing it for 5 years and you're like, this is getting pretty repetitive. And then you're doing it for 10 years and you're like, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, everyone wants to feel creatively stimulated, right?
Exactly. So it's kind of like that thing. So like, I think eventually after a little bit, you're kind of like, well, let me imagine a parallel universe where I took like a different fork down the road. Like, and I was just asking you the question, like, kind of like, is this something like that you think about a lot? Because like either of like the fallout not the fallout, but like, you know, when something isn't going like right, or like when things get difficult? Because I'm sure you get overwhelmed, right?
Yeah, of course. That's what's interesting about being in this position is it's a lot of extremes, you know, like it's great to be loved and like people to be really stoked about you. And then it also sucks to have people be really mean to you all the time, you know. So it's like, I don't know, it's like if you did your very favorite thing and somebody was like, you can do your awesome most favorite thing in exactly the way you love it, but also we're gonna like stab you in the heart every so often.
Just every so often.
Like, are you cool with that? And it's like,
Oh my
I
god.
guess I could like put up with it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime I see your name trending, I'm like, oh, I hope Arin's okay. I just like I'm sure that you have built up a pretty thick skin over the years, and coping mechanisms, and you know your people. But I'm sure it's very tough because the internet's a brutal place, and like the negative stuff sticks so much more than the positive, right? Like it's always gonna be the negative comments that like impress upon you.
Yeah, I mean the reaction to your world is around you is analogous to how you feel about yourself, right? So you know, if there's a lot of like negative self-image thoughts, then you know all you're gonna see are the negative self-image shit.
That's true.
So yeah, I mean there's a lot of that for sure, and I think most artists sort of struggle with something like that, which is ironic because the artists are the ones that are being the most vulnerable about themselves and then putting themselves out there on a platform like Instagram or whatever that's just saying like, hey, this is me, here's a place for you to comment anything you want to say with no repercussions.
It's kind of fucked up, and it happens that way in TV, especially in development, because like they expect you to be so vulnerable, and they're like, we like pour yourself into this character, like make this whole show yours, like we really want to hear and see it. But then as soon as you do, they start criticizing it and start saying how it doesn't work or this character, and it's just like you're like, wait, do you not like me? Like that's always the thing that happens. It's like, so you don't like me because you just told me to make this my own thing. And so I wonder how much of that translates into what you do.
That's interesting.
That's how it be.
Tell me more about that.
Oh man, I mean that's how it is. It's just like, well, so here's the thing, and we talked to Ross about this a little bit too, because Ross has been on the show early on, and I think that like what you guys do is really cool, and I love the independence, and I think it's really inspiring, and like but I've talked to Ross, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but like he was, you know, sort of asking me one point, like how he has thought about he wanted to get into TV animation at some point, and how like that sounded like a fun, appealing thing. And I think it doesn't really matter which direction you go. If you go independent or you go through the studio system, you end up with the same emotional baggage. Like you end up with dealing with the same things, just in a different color, like in a different shade of awful.
Oh, dude, yeah, absolutely. No. I mean, that's you said like you admire the freedom that I have, or something to that effect, like a minute ago, and it's like, yes, and also there's tons of responsibilities that I have as somebody that has, you know, 12 employees and you know, a corporate, it's, you talk about trending on Twitter, like the first thing I think of is like, are my employees going to be okay? You know, because I can be canceled or whatever. Like, I don't give a shit, but like, you know, I don't want 12 people to be out of a job because I said some shit on Twitter. Like that sucks. So like, you know, what does freedom mean, right? Like if you there's a part of me that envies people that go to work and they do one thing and they come home and they don't have to worry about anything anymore.
Totally. I think that all the time. Yeah, it's tough, but you know, I assume none of us would be happy with that. Like, I have those fantasies, but I have to get checked usually by the people close to me that say like, yeah, but you wouldn't be happy. Like you wouldn't, like I can't do anything else. I'm sure you feel the same, that you can't do anything else unless you do. I don't know.
I mean, the fact is you can't do everything, right? Like you can't be this and be that and have it all, right? You're dealt a hand in a lot of ways, and also like you create your own circumstances, but like the situation that you're in, you just have to enjoy for what it is, and to a point where you're not like being abused by anything, right? Like if you're you're not like you're not like a slave to your own mind or like your own like negative love patterns or whatever.
Sure.
Or like even the people around you, you know, there's a lot to enjoy about the things that you do have, that I feel like is important. And I think a lot of moments take reevaluating, right? Like it's like you know, am I happy with where I'm at right now? And if it's no, then it's like, okay, I'll make some changes. But for the most part, it's like, how can I find the joy in the things that I do day to day? Because there's never going to be a situation where it's just going to be fucking utopia, you know? Like
yeah. As you get older, I think you just kind of come to realize that it's like, it's not about finding this like pure happiness, this like end of the movie happy. It's like you find stability and comfort, and then hopefully some like fulfillment in, you know, whatever way it matters to you.
Yeah. And another thing is, and it's something that I've struggled with a lot and kind of still do to this day, is like being okay with like what your idea of happiness is, because so much of the world, whether it be like your parents or your friends or your job or whatever, tell you like this is how it should be and how you should view the world and how you should enjoy yourself. And there's so much about that that's like, well, that's not me, you know? And I think it's tough for a lot of people to admit that, to be like, well, I don't really like this thing that everybody else likes.
Sure.
You know, whether it be something as simple as a movie or something as complex as like somebody touching your arm or something like that, you know, like it's like everybody's got a different upbringing, so like to be okay with like, well, this is me and I'm okay with that is so much a part of being an artist. I think
you sound like you have like a pretty like, either I don't know if it's wisdom or if you've done a lot of work on yourself, but what would you say is like your path to kind of like mental health? Like, have you like maybe like seen the therapist? Do you read self-help? Do you kind of like
therapy is necessary, not just in life, but especially in the position that any of us are in, where, you know, so many people are looking at the things that we do. It's so necessary, because it's so easy to get fucked up by people judging the things that you're putting out there into the world. So to have somebody to say like, it's okay, you're you and you are okay, is like so fucking valuable. For anybody.
No, definitely. I remember you, I think it was a Game Grumps episode, this is years ago, but it stuck with me, that you had like I think you had like a rubber band or something on your wrist that you used to wear that like helped ground you, right? Is that something, or am I just pulling that out of my ass? Did I make that up?
He made it up.
I'm trying to. No, I have a terrible memory, so I mean, there's something that feels like familiar about that.
Or it was like, maybe it was like a string or something. But I remember you talking about how like you had this thing that would just kind of like remind you to like stay centered and like not. This was like probably like seven fucking years ago.
Okay, yeah. So I had I went to a retreat called Hoffman, the Hoffman process, which like I would kind of recommend, but it was it was sort of like the introduction to therapy for me. The concept of like, maybe there are really cerebral ways to work on yourself, emotional ways. But anyway, there was somebody that I went there with, who was a classmate, who made these like bands that you could put on your wrist, or you make necklaces out of, or whatever. And they were like, since we're done with the Hoffman process, I think it would be cool to give everybody a sense of like what their biggest struggle is, and make like bands out of them. So they were just like handing out free bands with the word or phrase that they wanted, that reminded them of like what they were struggling with. And mine was self-love. So I wore this band that said self-love on it, and I couldn't take it off. It was like, it was like completely locked to my wrist. So that was really nice to have and just always see, and like remind myself like, oh yeah, that's something I should practice.
Yeah, well, yeah, sometimes we need those reminders. I've been trying to do similar things with just like appreciating moments. Like I like when, because I have anxiety, and like I think about I often think of the worst outcomes, and I think of the worst situation that's going to happen, whatever. But so like when things are going well for me and I'm not feeling that, I've been trying to take stock of that. And I'll like, if I'm like driving somewhere and I'm in a good mood, I'm like, this is good. Just try to soak it in, and just try to live in that moment, because I know there's going to come some point where it's like not, where it's hard. Like and I have to live with that. And so I think that's a nice, if that helps somebody, having that kind of like reminder on their body, like that's great.
That's
whatever
really
gets
good,
you there.
Man. You saying you like have a moment where you're like, this is a nice moment, and you like take stock of that.
Especially after quarantine. Like I think, anytime I'm out with friends now, and it's like, oh right, like I don't take this for granted anymore. Like it's nice. I don't know. It's nice to kind of acknowledge those things, I think.
That's really sweet.
After the year we've had. But anyway, let's take it back. We got way off topic. So actually tying it into what we were just talking about a minute ago. Did you were really a really active animator, and doing a lot of cool stuff. And I to me, from my perspective, it feels like around the time of sequelitis was when you kind of started transitioning into doing like Game Grumps, and doing more of like, you became more of a host. Was there a moment where doing the independent animation route got to be too difficult, or you just stopped being fun for you? Did you have to do that kind of reevaluation, or was it just sort of a natural kind of weird, adjustment period?
I mean, look, man, like I certainly don't judge anybody for their life choices, right? Like if they're, because the world that we live in sucks. Like it's just it's tough to make money. It's tough to make a living, like it's so the position that I was in, where I was making cartoons for YouTube specifically, was going really well. Once I released Awesome Reach, which is like my first cartoon on Newgrounds that was monetized, or first cartoon on YouTube that was monetized. I made a fucking killing on that cartoon, and it was the most money I've ever had in my bank account in my whole life.
How old were you? Just wondering.
I was like 23, 22 or 23. And I was like, oh my God, this is the way to go. So, I was cranking out cartoons on YouTube, but the Game Grumps things just sort of came around as like a fun side project. And it was like, yeah, I have this time and I'll put into it, yada, yada. But I was still working on cartoons. And then as it turned out, coincidentally, the way that the YouTube algorithm shifted was, making long form content consistently paid off way more than making really short viral content. Which was how it was. Making short viral content was like the jam. That was the fun. If you made a 1 minute cartoon that got like 3 million views, you were sailing. But that all changed like overnight.
That's crazy. Isn't that crazy when you like think about it? Like how, like
I remember that.
Yeah, when it's just like you're at the whims of like a tech giant. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a choice I had to make of like, I like making cartoons, but I also like doing this thing, and this thing makes me way more money. So would I rather be living paycheck to paycheck on making cartoons, or would I rather be building something that also is fun, right?
Mhm.
So there was an attempt to continue to make cartoons at the time. I think I released like 2 or 3 cartoons after Game Grumps started.
Mhm.
But it was just like that art form, cartoons in particular, it takes so much fucking time and
Yup.
effort and like in focus, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And like I was already building something else. So it was like, how much time do I really have to devote to putting so much fucking focus into this thing that's going to end up being a minute and a half? So it was a realist approach, and like
Mhm.
I think for a while I was sort of ashamed of that, but I'm not anymore, because everybody's got to fucking pay rent, and everybody wants to
Sure.
have a
Yeah.
better life for themselves. So um I'm fine with that decision. I've also come full circle to the point
Mhm.
where like now my biggest concern, everything at Game Grumps is automated to a certain point where like now my goal is to make cartoons and like sell them to
Mm.
networks and be a
Oh,
part of
okay.
that process.
Oh,
So
interesting.
we have like 3 active cartoons that we're producing on our
Very
own,
cool.
That is so cool.
that
Th-
we're trying to sell. And it's like maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't, but um it's nice to be in that position again where it's like, okay, well, I'm doing something that takes a lot of focus and creative.
Mm.
It flexes that muscle.
Mhm.
um
Yeah, because you have been part of the industry. You have done voice acting for the Owl House, right?
oh yeah, I mean, that's just, well, the funny thing is I moved to LA to do voiceover, and then cartoons took
Oh,
off and then
really?
Game Grumps took off, so I
Yeah.
didn't really do a whole lot of professional voiceover, which was my goal, right? But then as a result of having done cartoons and having done Game Grumps for so long, a lot of people that were either fans of or collaborators from my past and over time just wanted me to be in their cartoons. So for like 2 or 3 years, most of the voice work that I was doing for television was just people asking me to be in their thing. And I was like, hell yeah.
That is
But
so
now,
cool because
dude, I
it's kind of
believe
like
me.
it's kind of like full circle too because you started making audio, right? That was your foot kind of into starting to make cartoons, indie
Oh yeah.
cartoons. So it's so interesting. It's so very cool. You started doing like 30 seconds on AIM and now you're doing voices for the big TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so much of that process is something that I just so love. Like I love voice acting. It's I never, anytime I do it, I fucking enjoy it. So even though it's not like a career for me, anytime that I can do it, I adore it. And like now, I have an agent, and I actually do auditions where I like submit auditions, and
Mhm.
I've gotten a lot of jobs from that. But like it's not really about the job at that point. It's more about like
Mhm.
I love doing this thing, and I'm so grateful to like be a part of this awesome project or whatever. Like when I did Mankey Bloodtooth in Borderlands 3,
Mhm. Mhm.
Love, Guns, and Tentacles. That was like so gratifying to like be in that booth and like develop this character
Mhm.
with the writers on the spot. Like that shit I fucking love.
Mhm.
Um, to be able to like jam on something with creative people and like build off of the energy from like their sense, because they're so fucking clever, and like their sense of humor and my sense of humor and how it like meshes. Like that was a fucking great, just a really great experience.
If there was like if there was one thing that you could choose to do, what would it be? Of all the things you've sort of done professionally or even just creatively, it doesn't have to even be like, professionally, but like, what's the thing that you would love to just keep doing and pay your bills and only do that one thing?
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like the pay the bills aspect really throws a wrench in everything.
Yeah.
Well, pay a pie in the sky. Like you're getting paid whatever you need, whatever money you're making now, but you are only doing the one thing. What would it be?
I don't know that I would do one thing.
Okay. So you still, you like the juggling of multiple.
I don't necessarily like being overwhelmed with so many projects.
Sure.
But I just like being creative, and I like following, a sense of passion, whether it's mine or somebody else's. I just like that feeling of like, oh, this is a really good idea. Let's fucking do this. That's just like fucking cocaine for me. Like it's so nice to feel that energy and to feel like connected to people and like the things that they are excited about, because like excitement is, in a way, excitement is vulnerable. It's
sure,
you're really revealing a lot about yourself to be excited about something. So I love that aspect of it. I've always said that if I retired, I would just get a warehouse and just build miniatures for the rest of my life.
Oh yeah, that's so interesting. Just like Toriyama.
Oh, does he do that? I didn't know.
Yeah. It's this big thing.
and then the fantasy is like I die and then it becomes a museum or whatever.
Yeah.
But like
these are Arin Hanson's miniature.
But like, I came to realize in my fucking 30s that like even as an adult, it's like I love little figures. I love when things are tiny.
It's so funny you say that, because I have like a group of girlfriends and we all realize at the same time we love tiny things. Tiny things are the shit. It's like, I don't know why. It just makes you feel good. Tiny spoon. So small. Exactly. I don't know. It's the world in the palm of your hand. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of. It's just like it allows you to sort of be. It's like a step between, because like you can walk through a city and have like a sort of fantasy about the city, but if you see the city in like this tiny form in front of you, there's so much more fantasy. And maybe it's like linked to, I would play with toys all the time as a kid and like come up with little stories or whatever. But there's so much more possibility when it's like right in front of you and you can move it and rotate it. And I don't know, I just think that's dope.
How we like to ask our guests how they deal with creative block and what it feels like for them when they have it.
So you're asking me, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yes. First of all, I want to comment on how wonderful the drawing is in front of me. I did your favorite Animal Crossing villager, and I drew Cube as I remembered him. But then everybody else drew fucking masterpieces of like Game Grumps and
the penguin.
That's amazing.
I love that penguin drawing.
It's just like he's just so lost. It's like, well, I'm here now. It's
I mean, in the middle of having a conversation and also like having not warmed up or anything, I'm just like,
have you gone to the second page? There's like a second page.
Oh, is there?
We forgot to mention that.
Yeah, this is like
how do I do that?
It's like
there should be a tab.
Follow the laser
tab.
See, like on top there's.
Oh my God, there's so much more.
Yeah, we've been going.
How did you do this?
Well, we just listened to you.
We're just listening to you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's easy to draw when you're listening.
Oh, come on. Okay, so the question was creative block.
Yes.
I sort of said it earlier, and it's true. What I used to do was like watch or consume my favorite pieces of media, right? Like favorite video game, comfort video game, or like comfort show or whatever. But I think what's more effective is watching something that's like not the best. Because there's something very empowering about seeing something that like got made like a whole team of people made this thing, and it just ended up not being that great. And it's like, well, if this can get made, if like a bunch of people could get excited about this and get paid to do this, then fucking, what am I whining about? Like, I on my own could make something better than this. So why am I worried about, what I'm making?
That is so true. I love that. This is such a good advice. I feel like this is not like this the not enough people are singing the praise of mediocre art.
No, sincerely, it's so inspiring, because so much. And I'll tell you, the thing that's the most interesting about mediocre art is because it's mediocre or bad. It takes so many fucking wild ass risks. Because it's like, who gives, like, it's obviously like from the mind of somebody who's an insane person, or like, just like doesn't understand the medium or whatever. But like, because of that, it's like creative in a way. It's like, why would you make these decisions? But also, I kind of applaud you for making these decisions,
I have this sort of, there's like a weird sweet spot where when something's too good, it intimidates me and I'm just frustrated, and I still enjoy it,
absolutely.
but I walk away from it being like, man, fuck them for getting it right. Like, I just I'm like, this is bullshit. But then like, there's some, I especially feel it in games lately, but like I played a game called Unsighted that was like a very good game. But they made odd choices, and they were choices though, and like, I can tell they had intent. And I walked away from it being like, I really liked playing that, but what the fuck were they thinking with some of those? Because like, just in like pure game design, just knowing what I know about game design, it's like, that was a bad choice, or maybe so. But I loved it more for that. Like, I kind of like that it was somebody's vision. Like, you can tell that it's somebody's vision, even if it's not perfect.
That game for me is Bullet Witch. I don't know if you've ever played Bullet Witch on the Xbox. Wow. It sucks, but like, it's just so weird how like, it's like a zombie apocalypse game, but it's also an action game, and it takes place during the day, and like, there's like these giants that walk around in the city, and it's like, whoa, this is like really aesthetically kind of like, I've never seen anything like this before. So I often revisit that game, either in video form or in actual playing, and I'm just like, man, it's so inspiring that somebody just like, fucking dove in and was like, I don't know, it's fucking giants in a city and they shoot rockets at you. I don't know.
You just got a big gun. This is pre-Bayonetta. This is
yeah, exactly. That's so right. It was pre-Bayonetta.
This is fascinating. I've never seen this game.
So funny.
We had a bunch of really good questions from our Twitter followers.
Oh yeah.
We will get to some of them from our
there's too many. There's too many.
Thank you all very much.
You're too popular.
Yeah. Get rid of some of those followers.
Is this like an arrogant raptor that somebody just drew? Like, you can raptor?
Yeah.
That was me. So we're gonna kick it off with our editor at Clement M, who is a big fan of yours and is very excited that you're on the show.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm just wanted to embarrass her. Her question was, and it's a very good question, how do you have so many projects going on at once and still kick ass in all of them? Do you have a special way to organize them or manage the stress of it all? Keep up the great work, but also rest, please.
That's very sweet. I appreciate that you think that I kick ass at all of them. I don't. Many of them fall to the wayside and are the secret is that I have a staff. Like I said, there's 12 people that work for Game Grumps, give or take.
Sure.
It sort of inflates and deflates based on how much work we have for people. But I have an assistant. I have 2 producers in-house, editors and everything. So like, I can execute on concepts a lot more quickly and easily than somebody who's working on their own and has to do everything themselves. That's how I do it. There's no secret. That's the answer.
How can you if we can, like, I don't know if we have like a little bit more time to spend on that question, but like, how did you build your staff? Kind of like how did that look like for you? How did you even have the idea? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea was just, I wanted to keep people employed. We had a couple employees early on in Game Grumps, and when there was that transition, I just wanted to keep everyone employed. Because it just like felt terrible to just be like, do we stop Game Grumps or do we keep going and have these people have jobs?
Right.
So that was a huge part of it. But I think something that I've learned is, if you're really going to build something that's like legitimate and does good work and does smooth work, probably avoid hiring friends.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
And I know that's such an appeal for everybody and everyone thinks that they're different, but like,
no, it's a terrible idea. I second that idea. I get it.
I love that you're like, everybody thinks they're different. I'm like, yeah, you've been there before.
Yeah.
Somebody, there's going to be a situation where you're like, oh man, like I really got to choose between like, the direction I want to go with this or the decision I want to make, and whether or not this person's going to be fucking upset that I made this decision, there's something inherently a little bit bastardy about being in charge of
absolutely
projects or anything creative that like you just have to make hard decisions. So hiring people that you're hiring particularly on the merit that like you get along with them and they're good at their job is so important. So a lot of the hiring that we've done recently has just been from fucking agencies and shit.
Oh, nice.
And they, like monster.com or whatever, our hiring agency, and then we have them on for a small amount of time, and we're like, do they gel or do they not? And if they don't, then it's like, no harm, no foul. I'm sure you'll find something somewhere else.
Right.
And if they gel, we keep them on. So I think that's pretty traditional. But yeah, I think a lot of people have gotten the impression of like, he hires so many people, and it's like, no, it's just, sometimes some people just don't work out. Like they're with us for like 3 months, and then it's like, oh well, they'd probably be better somewhere else.
Arin Hanson, the new Google hiring 30 people. That's a joke. He only has 12.
Yeah, come on.
Come on.
I thought you were serious for a second. From @cash asked, how are you able to handle the transition and current workload, juggling being an artist and online content creator? Did being one help you improve in the other?
Yeah, well, being an artist has definitely helped me work with other artists, because artists are very particular people. And so like somebody who's like very business minded would probably not have a lot of agreements with certain artists.
Sure.
So having an artist mind makes me sort of understand like, oh, this is where they're coming from. I get it. I want to be able to provide something for them that makes them feel comfortable, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that has sort of helped me in my because I love artists. At the end of the day, I think artists are the fucking heart of society. And like, growing up, I always hoped that someone would say yes to the things that I did creatively, and so much of what I experienced growing up was no's. So like, to be able to say yes to somebody who's in that position is so gratifying. What was the heart of the question?
I think you got it. I think it's just, the question was how you kind of have used your artist background and where you are now. Like, but I think you answered it well, that you understand the artist mentality well.
Yeah. There's one thing I do want to add to that though, is I think there's a sense of that, like something was given up as a result of like me being in the position that I am now in terms of like my artistic creativity or whatever. But that's so like one track minded, I think, because you can be creative in so many different ways that aren't just drawing a picture or writing a song or whatever.
Sure.
And there are ways to get that gratification out of so many things in your life, and it's just a matter of being creative about those things. That I love, like I said, like I love jamming on things, and like, you know, we have like a merch manager and we have a production manager, so like being able to collaborate with them and being like coming up with ideas and having ways that they can execute on that and how I can help with that is like, it sort of fills that void a little bit.
Yeah. And related to that, we had a question that I thought was good, from at Holy Night High Car. How did you come up with RPGs, and what are your tips on creating a merchandise line?
Oh, wow, that's a very well, I love that question.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of figuring out that for my band, and so I'm like,
oh no shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I came up with RPGs because I had a week and a half off. I ended up using that by working.
You're a workaholic, Aaron.
I have time off. How can I work a little bit more?
No, I do the same thing. I'm a workaholic. Yeah, it's like anytime I had a big, sorry, I just, we're getting off topic, but it's like I had a lull, and same thing as you, where I was just like, well, what can I start while I can't. Anyways, yeah. So you had a week and a half off.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I really loved making things out of clay, and one of the things that I made out of clay the most was, I was really into like Final Fantasy 3/6, and like Chrono Trigger and stuff, and I would try to replicate the little sprites out of clay, and I just loved, you know, having them all standing together and just having these little representations of these characters in front of me. So that was sort of what I was channeling with RPGs, was like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to have that in a way where I could like collect them and line them up, and I love you know, blind box stuff and like trading cards, and so the idea of what's super, I've gotten accused of this a lot, and this is just me personally, but you know, the idea of having like rarities and blind boxes and stuff is like, oh, you're just trying to like do like a Skinner box thing where you're trying to sell more or whatever. But it's like, no, have you not seen, like, I love that shit. I buy
fun
Pokemon card packs all the time.
Yeah.
Like I really love the idea of like going out and getting something that's random, and you're like, I really want this one thing, and you open it up and you don't get the thing, but like you end up really loving the thing that you got because it's the thing that you got and it's yours. And that was sort of the inspiration behind like creating like a blind box experience, where it's like, I want the white mage, but I ended up getting the paladin, but I kind of like the paladin now because it's this experience I had, and it's this story I had where I was like with my friends, and I opened it up and it was like, oh, and you know, and it's not something that I would usually like, but now I like it. That's the most interesting to me about RPGs. So yeah, so I guess that was the impetus of it, was trying to relive something in my childhood and also trying to replicate something that I enjoy on a daily basis. I mean, I fucking open up a pack of cards like at least once a week.
And I mean, you have a staff, you know, you mentioned you have a merch manager and all that to help you execute on those things. But what's that conversation like? Is it just sort of like, I have this idea, let's set aside some money, and then you kind of figure it out from there? Is that usually how it works?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, again, it's twofold, right? I'm a huge believer of like art from adversity, right? You know, to have like a blank slate and a white page and just start from nothing is its own experience, but it's not necessarily the optimal experience. And I don't know that there is an optimal experience, right? But I love the idea of being challenged. So if we're in a situation where it's like, these are the 5 most successful things that we've ever done, then it's like, okay, how do we work within those sort of rules to create something fun and interesting, right? And that's not necessarily the only way that I approach merch. Sometimes I just have a stupid idea and we want to do it, like the Gyaru boob mouse pads or whatever. Like those are, and they were a huge hit. Like they went over really well, but it's like that was just a fun idea. So yeah, it depends on the situation. Sometimes we'll just have like a merch meeting and we'll be talking about one item and it'll be like, hey, what if we do it this way? Or sometimes the people in the meeting will have an idea and I'll be like, that's a great idea, let's do that. So it's not really, there's no really one way that we do it. It's just because there's so many people involved, it's collaborative, and nobody, I feel like, really has an ego about any of that.
Right. From @Jerry Meehan Jr. What's the best way of tackling making cartoons for YouTube now? Is there an actual chance to make it as a storytime animation channel now, or are those waters flooded?
Yes, and it's interesting that you say storytime because that's a really easy way in.
Yeah.
And so from what I've heard, and I haven't experienced this firsthand because we don't release that kind of content so much, but I've heard that shorter content is being more rewarded. And I know at the very least, if you make actual shorts, so they're like trying to compete with TikTok, that's a big thing that helps you like algorithmically.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about TikTok and like how YouTube recently came out with how do you call it? Like the very short YouTubes?
Reels?
Yeah,
no, not reels. Shorts.
Shorts? Okay. Yeah, because that's YouTube trying to compete with TikTok, right?
Yeah, of course. And like when they do that kind of stuff, they they have control over what you're fed. So
yes.
Like if they want that part of their platform to be really active, they will push that. And like they will reward creators that do that. So that so from what I understand, that's what's happening right now. So if you are a cartoonist, it's really easy for you to make like 15-second cartoons and put them up as shorts. Honestly, I would recommend TikTok as the way to do it.
Yeah.
The one thing that I've heard consistently throughout my career, even before YouTube, is that YouTube is not a monetization platform. It is an advertising platform.
Interesting.
So if you, for example, create some kind of series, whether it be a cartoon or otherwise, that isn't even monetized on the platform, if you can turn that show into some other way to monetize, whether it be, a lot of people just use Patreon or whatever, but if you turn it into a merch brand, or if you turn it into like a lifestyle brand or something, then
lifestyle.
As you continue to create content, it makes the brand prevalent in people's lives as a daily thing or a weekly thing.
How, if that's okay to ask, how would you say that applies to your brand? Is it just do you feel like merchandising is where you get the most income?
So the funny thing is, we're almost an outlier because we do experience a great deal of monetization because we put out so much stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Every day, there's over 6,000 uploads on the channel.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that's a big chunk, but like, yeah, we have branched out in merchandise, and we have, for example, we did Dream Daddy, which from the beginning was a creative idea, but like once we came up with the creative of it, we were like, okay, what do we do with this? And the idea was like, we have a platform, and this isn't necessarily like Game Grumps related, but it's adjacent enough where we can say to the people that watch Game Grumps, hey, there's this thing that you might like, and then use that as a sort of like a rocket ship that launches it into a stratosphere that ends up taking its own momentum, which is what happened. which is very gratifying.
Mm.
But that was the goal with that. You know, it was like, you know, no Dream Daddy uploads we uploaded were monetized or anything like that. Like it was just it was all about the game.
Okay, can I ask really fast a question? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm like stepping over the Twitter fans.
That's okay.
But I was wondering, how do you consider yourself an artist versus like a businessman? And if you think about business, do you think it comes more from the people you hired, or have you like read books or like taken any like kind of classes? Kind of like, how do you conceive art, creativity versus business?
There's part of me that hates this question, and
I'm so sorry. You can cut it. You can cut it.
And I almost wanted to preface that with that, like, please don't take offense to this, because it's not meant in that way. It's just, I think early on there was more of like a segregation between like, am I the businessman or am I the artist? But when it comes down to it, you know, we talked about earlier, like when you're, say, working for a Nickelodeon or whatever, it's like that's a job. And you know, as creative as you want to be, or as much as yourself as you want to put into it, that's still a job, and that's business.
Yes.
If you were in a situation where you didn't have to pay the bills, you didn't have to pay rent, you weren't trying to, you know, bolster your savings account so you could fucking travel like you always wanted to or something like that, you probably wouldn't be doing the thing that you're doing, right? So there's always a sense of like the weight of the reality of living versus the full freedom of creativity. So the way that I've come to sort of view it as an adult is just like, there are always challenges, and every challenge can be interesting and fun, and as long as you're not like creating a whole lot of harm for people, and you're generating some sense of enjoyment for the people around you or yourself, I think, you know, it's all one and the same, really, because there's a lot that I use about being an artist that helps me with what I do, and there's a lot about you know, coming up with strategies or whatever it's fun. It's like problem solving. It's you know, there's something artistic about that, where it's like, okay, let's creatively think of a way to navigate the situation, because it's not necessarily the easiest thing to figure out a problem, a solution to.
Sort of in line with that, we had a question from @GravyNavy. Gravy Navy is a very good name. Have you ever had an interest in directing a crew to make a larger scope indie cartoon?
So that's happening. I sort of implied earlier, we have 3 shows that we've been pitching around. One of them is mine, something that was my idea. I'm heavily involved in. You know, I have a writing partner, and we have an animation team, but it's my show. So and even then I feel like it's like, well, we're working with a team, so it's not necessarily my show, but the inception of it was my idea. So yes, I am doing that actively, and it's something that I love to do. So if that answers the question.
Very cool. So what are some of your future goals for your career, or even just in life in general?
I am loving these sketches of girls just hanging out.
This is V. This is what happens every episode, is like I have a little bit of, I have some bandwidth in me, and then like an hour in, I'm like, I can't fucking do this anymore, and then V just draws girls for like the remainder of the show.
There's so much. I mean, this appeals to me so much, because like, if all I want to be in life is just like a girl hanging out with her girlfriends, like
I mean, listen, 100%. that's what I aim for. I'm still looking for the pathway to that. So
when fucking K-On! Came out, that anime about like the girls that create like a band, the episodes that were my favorite was when they were like at a beach house and they were just like hanging by the pool. I was like, man, I just want to be that.
It just
so
seems
badly.
nice.
Right? It's just like, wow, they're just jamming. That's great.
Just chilling.
I think okay. Just okay. This is gonna be my PSA. I'm so sorry. Maybe we cut this out, but being a girl just chilling is hard.
Oh yeah, I imagine
It's not
that's
all
so
it's
as well.
cracked up to be.
Oh yeah, no, it's a total fantasy. Yeah, that's for sure.
All right, that was the end of my PSA. I'm not gonna go too deep into it. No.
As a man, I can say that I don't
Yeah.
fully understand that aspect of it. It's just fun to see. In the same way that like, oh man, I wish it was Frodo hanging out with the fucking
Yes, exactly. That is
people trying to. It's just a fantasy. That's for sure. What was the question?
Sorry.
Just talking about future goals.
Yeah.
Oh, future goals. I don't know. The thing that I enjoy the most sustainably about what I do is that I can empower a lot of people to like do something, you know. Like I said earlier, like all I wanted when I was a kid was somebody to say yes to the things that I was doing, and so few people did that. So to be able to say yes to artists or you know, anybody that's trying to build something is great. And then on top of that, it's just a matter of like just being happy, just trying to live life. There's such a duality to working so hard, being in the public eye, and then also trying to just be a normal person. That I think is a fight that I will probably continue to fight for years. But I think the conclusion of it is that I just fuck off to a forest and just paint all day.
Yeah. Are you painting?
No, but well, I have. I recently did a couple, but it's not. That's the stuff where that's like I don't want to show anybody.
Oh yeah, no, I get that.
It's like fully my thing. And also, I mean, there's a lot of other. Dude, it could be a whole nother podcast about like what I want
Go for it
in the future, but like there's so much I would love to do about reforming the educational system.
Oh my God. Talk about all the philosophers, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to find a way to like help kids like grow up in a world that doesn't fucking hate them.
Right.
And,
school is like traumatic. Like it's like I still have nightmares about the school system, and like that can't be good. Like
it's actually it's very common. It's very common for people when they're like, I don't know, in their 40s and they still think about like their high school exit exam or their SATs, and it's like,
that cannot be good. That can't be the only way.
No, of course. I mean, the idea that anybody dreads that kind of stuff is like, and that there are people that are like, yeah, well, that's just how it is. It's like that's doesn't how it have to be. We made that, like we
used to know not the child labor laws.
Yeah, exactly. And then to that same effect would be, I would love to be able to do something that has to do with like city design or urban design or like helping the homeless or something, because that's like a fucking huge issue in America that I think has a lot of relatively easy answers that can at least steer it in a direction where it's like a decent chunk better than how it is.
Well, there are other countries that have implemented things that have dramatically helped, and America just doesn't want to.
It's a very complicated issue. Not to get super political on the podcast, but like I live like right next to Skid Row, and it's like so I kind of like watch a bunch of like stuff about homelessness, and it's like it's so embedded in the system that unfortunately it looks like it's simple, but it's very complicated because it's tied to a lot 100%. Of like the deep way of like how the system has been like going in America for a long time.
Yeah, it's 100% systemic. I mean, the story of Skid Row was fucking tragic. How it was basically created to be that way. It sucks. So a lot of so I think in my head the idea was like, okay, I work really hard, I get to a position where I'm comfortable, where I don't have to worry about working so hard, and then I can use whatever resources I have to be able to make some kind of difference. Because I've tried to do that as in the position that I'm in, and I just don't have the focus because I'm doing so many things that like I don't feel like I'm doing a good job like helping anything. So I'm at the point now where I'm like, all right, well, let's make a plan where like this is how much I work. And then once I'm done with that, then I can put my full focus into something else that sort of like helps people. Because at the very least right now I'm helping people laugh.
That's very important. Yeah.
Which like I'm sure people have varying opinions of, but like, you can't argue with the weekly emails I get from people saying like I didn't kill myself because I watched Game Grumps. Like that's like, while that is a lot of responsibility, that's like you can't argue with that kind of
right. 100%. I think honestly there's like, I wish we could like go deeper into like the whole parasocial discussion, because I do think there are a lot of the new generation that really relies on internet content, and you provide like a friend or like a stability to some people, and that's a huge fucking responsibility. You're like the big brother of like I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people, but that's a huge, that's a whole other topic entirely, but that's like a huge struggle of like, because then that's a conversation of like boundaries, right? Like what because it's so easy for somebody to come up and say like, here's my life story, my life sucks, it's terrible, you've done so much for me, and then it's like, then you're in a situation where it's like, do I do more? Do I engage personally? I don't know. So at the very least, I'm like, okay, well, at least what I'm doing right now is enough.
You do what you can.
Exactly.
I think so, and I don't even think it has to go as extreme as people saying that you help them not kill themselves. Like I think just which is valid, but I think that I have my own parasocial relationships, I guess, with people, with some internet personalities. Some of them I've actually become friends with, and the dynamic shifted obviously because of that, but it's nice. Well, so my example is Mega 64. Like I started listening to them a time ago, and it was right after college where all my friends had kind of gone on to do different things, and I started listening to their podcast, and it like really helped me in that transition, because like I was alone, and like I needed something, I needed that little bit of social interaction throughout the day while I was working on stuff. And then Game Grumps was that for me, like when I first moved out and started working full time, and like, I guess I've never really mentioned that, but like I was listening to all the early episodes for a while because it was just like nice. It was just nice to have on, and so like I was just felt like I was in the room, like with you guys joking around, and so like that there's value to that, and this podcast for Getting Sappy is also that, because like from our listeners, we've heard people say like I love having you guys on in the background, like it's been informative, this and that, and so like there's value to those things. There's value to what you do, there's value to what we do, hopefully, and so I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know what the point is.
It's the really point is that there's value.
It's really the whole idea of like, we shouldn't need bandages, but it's nice that they exist, because every so often you get wounded, like
sure,
it shouldn't be the case where like kids really need to listen to a show where people are just making fart jokes to feel like they need a reason to live. But like that's the world we live in right now, and it's
always been the world.
Stuff exists.
I feel like this could go in a huge tangent, so maybe episode 2 or whatever.
Episode 2. Redux.
I think
yeah, I think we can wrap it up. I think that what you've done in your career is great. I think that it has inspired a ton of people, and what you continue to do is obviously really valued to a lot of people. And so yeah, we're really happy to have you on the show. It was great chatting with you about all this stuff.
Yeah. You're super fun and super insightful, so much wisdom. I think this is such a cool, awesome episode, unconventional, but gonna answer a lot of questions we didn't get to answer in other episodes. So
True.
cool.
Wow, I appreciate that. I mean, you guys created an environment that made me feel very comfortable to talk. So that's
we try.
A lot of it's on you.
We try.
Oh, shucks.
we've heard that from other guests, and we try. It's nice that it comes across because we do try to keep a cozy, chill atmosphere. We're just people chatting.
Hell yeah.
Chatting and drawing girls hanging out at the pool.
Yeah, I gotta say, page 3 is definitely my favorite page.
I see how it is, Arin.
I mean, there's a lot to love about page 1 and 2, but
Arin doesn't like Gene's art. Canceled.
This is how you trend again on Twitter. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I remember the last time well, it wasn't the last time we talked, but one of the times we talked, we were talking about this GIF that you made of like some Mario characters, and it was just this fucking beautiful flash loop that you had made.
Yeah.
And that was like years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm still look back on that and I'm like, this is gorgeous. So like I don't want you to think at all that I don't fucking respect what you do, because you're amazing.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it. That means a lot. Well, is there anything you want to plug while you're on the
show? Love one another and love yourself.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Great place.
And
to
also youtube.com/Game Grumps.
Buy our merch. That's the end of this creative block. Thanks to Arin for being our guest and sharing his story.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
And thanks to your listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to my sister Clemens for editing the podcast.
If you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was V. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.